Hey folks, I'm Matt Major from Growth Mode Content. Very excited to bring you the very first episode of The Fizz at Brown Carbonic. We are joined by the man himself who makes all this beautiful fizz. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my friend.
My name's Shawn Salle, and my family owns Brown Carbonic.
We're going to learn so much about this business. So we've been talking for a while, and what's interesting in this content business is, everybody can use content. Everybody can use this sort of branding to get their name out of there, but it's always a unique situation based on your business. And your business is really unique, right? There's very few people around town who do what you do. Mm-hmm. And we're going to learn a lot about that. And what's wild is, on its surface, it sounds, oh, that's a simple thing. And the more we get into it, it's incredibly interesting. You've got everything from customer service to manufacturing to logistics that you're managing here in this local business. And we're really excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Without further ado, Shawn, let's just jump right into the very basics of what is Brown Carbonic.
Yep. So Brown Carbonic, Brown is actually, there's a gentleman named Fred Brown. So that's where Brown comes from.
Okay.
And carbonic is just the term for the industry for providing CO2 or gases, soft drinks for bars, restaurants, any place that serves food.
Gotcha.
That's where that comes from.
So you make the beverages cold and available at restaurants. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So we pack it, or we manufacture, we package, and we distribute all on our own right here in Syracuse to about a 75-mile radius from here.
Wow. And I think this is the part that I find truly interesting, because there's a number of companies, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they're distributors, right? They take a product from another company and they help get it out into the world. That's not what you do. You are literally manufacturing the things that you are delivering. And let's talk a little bit about that. So you mentioned briefly the CO2. That's what gives the bubbles in your soda and all those fun things. What are some of these other products that you're bringing to restaurants?
So we make Challenger Cola, which is, our local version of, you've heard of Pepsi and you've heard of Coke.
Sure.
But Challenger Cola is our brand. And
so wait a minute, you make your own soda.
We make our own soda here in Syracuse.
You don't go to Wegmans and buy cases of it and pour it in a big jug.
Nope.
You actually manufacture your own cola.
Yeah, we have a sugar tank.
Wow.
That's I think it's like 30,000 gallons.
Dang.
Heated to 90 degrees to keep it liquefied.
Okay.
So we take that sugar and we mix with ingredients, flavorings, colorings, and come out with a syrup.
Wow.
And that syrup is then packaged into a bag-in-a-box, which is very similar. Think of like box wine.
Sure.
It comes in a bag, in a box. So we package our syrup, our soda, just like that. And then we take that and then we distribute that across central New York to restaurants.
And so this is a product, like you said, specifically for restaurants, right? You're not going to go buy it in a can. You don't can or bottle it or anything,
Correct,
right?
correct.
It's a commercial only type of product.
Yep. Fountain soda.
How long has the company made this soda? How long have you been doing this part of the business?
Yeah, so my grandparents actually used to sell Coca-Cola back in the day.
Wow.
And they ended up purchasing a company up in the Utica area called Sensar Carbonic. And that actually had a facility in it that used to make 7-Up. It was a 7-Up bottler.
Wow.
So it had batch tanks and sugar tanks and
had all the parts.
Exactly. It had the makes to make soda. So my grandfather said, all right, enough reselling Coca-Cola,
Sure.
where he was only making, a penny on the dollar. And we started making our own soda.
Wow.
And that was over in the Utica area, and that was in the 70s, mid-70s.
Wow.
And then we moved that to Syracuse just because Syracuse is the hub of everything, and it's more centralized.
Wow, that's incredible. So for between 40 to 50 years now, your family has been making these incredible drinks. That it sounds like chances are many of us, if you're a soda drinker and you've been out to dinner somewhere, you've probably been drinking these, right?
Yeah. I mean, you've probably have had it 100 times and you may not even known it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. No,
I think that's
unique.
so neat. And the cola is Challenger Cola. Is there any story behind Challenger, or is that just like a trendy name, or what? Where did that come from?
So, years and years ago, before like branding was really a big thing,
Yeah.
we just called it cola.
Sure.
And then I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, we got the kind of idea to start branding and make it more recognized. So, for years we were like, what's a good name? What's a good name? And my father said, let's go with Challenger Cola. And the idea is, take a challenge to try something unique, try something different, and not just, the name brand stuff.
Yeah. That's incredible. Do you find that it's easy, or is it challenging to get restaurants to, not use one of the big name brands?
It's definitely challenging. And it's challenging because you're most familiar with Coke or Pepsi.
Sure.
And just throwing something out there that you've never heard of, although you may have had it, you just don't know. So some folks are skeptical. So we do taste testings all the time and find out that our product tastes, in my opinion, as good or better than a national brand, and it works.
I love that. And, that reminds me back in the day, if you're old enough to remember the Cola Wars, where the two big ones went at each other, and those blind taste test things were such a common occurrence. You'd see it in every marketing and commercial and everything like that. And, we've had some conversations. That might be something that we bring back here on the Fizz.
Yes.
In this podcast here, and do that kind of live blind taste test. We won't rig it. We'll have the real alternatives, and if somebody goes, this one's better, we'll tell you. But I'm excited about that because that really gets into it. And, we're talking about cola. You do the whole sort of gamut of sodas, right?
Yeah. So we have our Challenger Cola, our Challenger Diet Cola. We have, ginger ale, root beer, 7-Up, or lemon lime.
Wow.
And we also make our full line of juices: cranberry juice, orange juice, pineapple juice.
Wow.
We even have an energy drink similar to Red Bull. We call it Matador.
That's incredible.
Yep.
That's incredible. It's, this is one of those businesses that has that unique niche, right? Like everybody drinks a beverage, but you're not even necessarily serving that. You're able to serve specifically these commercial places that are the place you get your beverage from, and not direct to you, which is kind of a unique business model that I think people are interested in.
Yeah.
What do you do to keep this soda cold?
So we don't.
This is a bad segue.
We don't have to keep it cold.
Yeah.
So our product is shelf stable. When it gets delivered, it stays shelf stable. When you're as a bartender or waitress or waiter, as you are pouring it or dispensing it, whether it's from a bar gun or a machine,
Gotcha.
that point it mixes with water, or it's cooled or chilled, and that's how you get a cold soda. It's always room temp back in the back of the kitchen.
So it kind of chills on its way to you. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
You don't need a giant cooler to keep all of these sodas cold all the while. That's kind of neat. I think that's pretty cool. Speaking of cool, soda's not one of the only products that you make, but you also are very big in the ice space, right?
Yes, we package ice.
Tell folks what that means, or where they may have seen your product.
So we take water and we freeze it. So we
Revolutionary.
secret family recipe. So we have a whole full production. We have giant ice machines. We have a whole automated plant that takes from start to finish. We got, your water, it freezes it, turns it into cubes. We take cubes, we put them in bags, and we have a whole automated process to take that bag and palletize it and wrap it.
Wow.
We distribute from Syracuse to Buffalo to Potsdam to Binghamton to Little Falls.
Wow.
And we move a lot of ice.
And this is often the ice, we talk about consumer products. This sort of is a consumer product, right?
Exactly.
This is something that I'm going to go buy out of those big chests at the convenience store, right?
Yep. And that's probably 95% of the volume is all to convenience stores or gas stations.
Is there like your restaurants, do they get bags of ice, or do they typically have kind of their own ice makers and things like that?
Good question. So we actually lease out ice machines.
Oh, wow.
So kind of two-part is that, I should back up. my grandparents had started at the ice company of Elmira. So they always had sold ice for a little bit.
Gotcha.
But
They were the coolest.
they,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I had to go for it.
So so we lease out ice machines. So kind of two parts is they sold a little bit of ice on a very small scale, but they also had ice machines that we lease out. And part of that program is when we lease out an ice machine that we provide free ice if it ever breaks or what.
Gotcha.
So we always had a demand, whether it was to sell it or provide it, to have ice. So that was kind of the reason why we kept with ice. And over the years, it had started growing. And we would sell to restaurants, whether it's a movie theater that orders a pallet at a time or your local restaurant that has an ice machine that they own that breaks and they need coverage. So we deliver a few 100 pounds. And that was really for the longest time the volume of where it went. Up until about probably 7 years ago, we started getting into more of the small bag.
Okay.
And what I mean by small bag is we went from a 40-pound bag. So think of like a bag of salt, like one you would dump into your water softener. Take a bag that big, and that's what we were moving. 40-pound bags are huge.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, like throwing this thing over my shoulder weighed more than I did.
Right.
And so that was most of what we did. It was big 40-pound bags, and then we moved down to 30s. But what I mean small is we went down to 5-pound bags. These things were it's like a little bag of sugar.
Yeah, right.
That's like how big a 5-pound bag is. So we went down to a 5-pound, and that was how we started into the retail side of moving 5-pound bags. And 5-pound bags are a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Pain in the ass. So, and that was really before we got into the whole production side. And that opened us up into the industry. So we started with this 5-pound bag and got some volume, got some movement, and we started shifting directions and getting into more automated. And with that, we decided to go back to a 7-pound bag just because that's what the industry was. Everything around here was all 7-pound bag at that time. So we put production in, we go to a 7-pound bag, and now we have a 7-pound and a 22-pound.
Wow.
Yeah. But I'm glad we don't have the 40s anymore because those were ridiculous.
I can imagine. That must have made for some real strong folks carrying those around and doing that job.
I'm pretty sure my dad told me that they used to do 50s. Wow. I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think so.
That's incredible. But so now you got this massive operation and you've got all these convenience stores everywhere that have these chests. You're doing this ice. How do you get it to them?
Yeah, so we have 8 different trucks, refrigerated freezer trucks that we have across Central New York that we fill up with 10, 12 pallets and deliver.
Now, when we were talking previously, and this is a little under the hood, but I think it's kind of interesting because we were talking about this previously about how you go about this, and I asked you, I think something along the lines of like, do your trucks have a route, right? Do they just go out and hit the same loop of businesses every time? And you said, no, we have a much more efficient way. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, so we remotely monitor every freezer we have out there. So I know if that one down the road is getting low or that one over there is full. And it gives us the ability to be efficient, that we know how much to deliver, when not to deliver. It saves on fuel, saves on drivers. It just predictable, so we know how much, like if I know that I have 10 pallets to go out, I need to make sure that I have 10 pallets in my freezer.
Sure.
So it's changed the game of us being able to grow so fast.
That's incredible. That's great to see that efficiency, and and that of course boils down to even the consumer, and when you can be that efficient, the price of frozen water doesn't have to go up.
Yeah. It's really given us the ability to grow, because if you own a convenience store, I can say, hey, Matt, I can promise you, you're never going to run out of ice.
Yeah.
And if you do, because that happens, if you do, I know about it way before you do. So we're able to react so much faster and get your location to have ice so you can sell.
Well, if you're thinking about those machines, the clerk inside, he ain't really paying attention,
right.
And especially if things were sold on other shifts, you got no idea.
Yeah.
So that's incredible and brilliant that you have that sort of system in place. Those are the types of things that I find really interesting about a business that, I don't know if we said when was it officially started? Like, how old is the company altogether?
Yep. So the company started in, I don't remember the exact date when Fred Brown had started it. I believe it was 1965.
Wow.
And so my grandparents started in Elmira.
Yep.
My grandfather was in the restaurant kind of industry, I guess you could say. Of he would do anything that he could do to that needed to be fixed. So like if you had a fryer, if you had an oven,
okay,
and that's how he was in the restaurant.
I see.
So at that point, there was Coca-Cola was looking for someone to work on their soda equipment. They found my grandfather and said, "Hey, can you work on this?" He said, "Yeah, of course." So that got him into the beverage side of it,
Gotcha.
or working on soda equipment. And from that led into selling Coca-Cola product. And that was sometime in the 70s, I think. And but they started down in Elmira. And that's where my father was pretty much raised. And there was one building which they ran as W. Salle Company, which was the soda portion, and then the ice company, which was just down the road as the ice company portion of the business.
That's incredible. I mean, that's the thing, is this history that spans decades and decades and decades and continuing to evolve.
Yes.
And continuing to be passed on as a family business, which is something I don't know if a lot of folks really understand, but that doesn't actually typically happen. A lot of folks think of so many businesses are generational, but the truth is many of them sort of fall apart when they go from one to the next.
Yeah.
You've managed to keep it going. You're clearly very passionate about the business and moving it forward, which is awesome to see. What are, having all these resources and having this great business and having this fleet of trucks has also helped you, or given you the ability to sort of help out in the community as well, right?
Yeah.
There was a really cool project that I happened to catch. You were all over the news for.
Were you fishing for something?
Tell us a little bit about the fish project that you were involved in.
Yeah. So we were asked by Megan at TDO if we could help, and she knew that we were in the ice business, and so we had freezer trucks. So there is a salmon fishery that grows or raises fish,
like a fish farm, basically.
Yeah, it's a fish farm.
Yeah,
they have these giant pools filled with thousands and thousands of salmon that was going out of business. So instead of just throwing the fish in a dumpster,
right,
they got creative and found a home for them. But that was going to be different from their normal operation, where they'll sell, 1,000 pounds of fish right off the dock, and that's it. Well, they're talking about 40,000 pounds of fish, all in about 2 to 3 weeks. So they had to kind of combine a bunch of resources, get some volunteers, they reached out to Megan to find out where they could do it. And Megan came up with a food bank. So the food bank of CNY was the majority of the donation. Some of it actually went to the Indian reservation, which was pretty cool. They smoked it.
Wow.
I talked to the gentleman that was doing it, and that was pretty neat. And so our part was providing freezer trucks. We provided, it was 2 trucks over the course of 3 weeks. We provided, I think it was 4 pallets of ice, or about 8,000 pounds of ice.
Wow.
And the logistics or transportation from Auburn to Rochester.
Wow.
And back.
That's incredible. So you were the transport of these things to the was it to the destination or to the processing where they turn into edible fish?
It was
a fish butcher shop. I don't know. There's got to be a term for that. I don't know what it is.
I don't remember what it is now, but it was so in Rochester was a processor,
Gotcha.
the fish processor, and they fillet them and they freeze them and then they ship them back to the food bank for distribution.
That's incredible. What a great cause, and great of those people in that business to have that foresight of making a donation rather than just, losing all that when there's so many people could use it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fish. And when Megan reached out, so part of our whole ice program, which is really, really unique, is so Megan reached out and she's like, "Hey, can you help out the food bank?" And I was like, "Yeah, how can I help?" Well, we actually have a program that every ice bag that we sell, a donation from that sale goes to the food bank.
Oh, wow.
So we were already in a really big support of the food bank.
You were already on that page.
Yeah.
That was great.
So like I said to her, I said something like, "Yeah, like we'll definitely help. Just tell me how.
Sure.
What do you need?"
That's so neat. I mean, and that's what these organizations need, right? Is folks in these businesses that have the resources to come together and help people out. And love to see you doing that. That's such a neat thing. Also great for people to know. Is there as they're out grabbing their ice, and so they know that portion of that goes to the donation. The particular label on the cooler, on your bag, what should folks look for?
Yeah, so on the bag, our 7-pounder is a bag that has labels on both sides. On one side, it says Ice Company of Lamar. On the other side is in, I think it's yellow and black letters. It says that a donation from each bag, I don't know what it is, something like a donation from each bag goes right to the food bank.
But it's right on there, so you
it's
know,
right on
you
there
know you got the right thing.
Black and yellow.
It says it right on the bag. That's awesome. That is such a cool thing, man.
Yeah, we've been doing it for, I think, 4 years now. Pretty much when we made that move to go from small ice company to, I'll call it medium size.
Yeah.
We kind of made that part of our whole program, is that as we continue growing this, the food bank or the community will grow with it.
I mean, what a great mission, right?
It's pretty cool.
It's unique to tie yourself to the folks who need it the most, which is pretty cool. What is the future for this business?
The future is just growing. It's cool. It's cool.
More of just the same type of product? Is there anything new and unique that's sort of on the horizon in this business, or what are you seeing there?
So we're extending our footprint. We are looking at some new territory, some new areas.
Wow.
And we're looking to grow. We got some cool things coming down the pipeline.
And for you to do that as a business, does that require more physical locations? You got to open up an actual spot to work out of, or is it a matter of just more trucks and they go farther sort of thing?
So I think it actually has to do with being able to rely on the team.
Okay.
So if we didn't have the team that we had right now that is competent, reliable, there's no way we'd be able to take on these projects we got coming on.
Oh, wow.
I mean, sure, you can buy trucks, you can buy facilities, but at the end of the day, you have to have people that help you out and you can rely on.
So your, I guess I would say your secret sauce to success is really your team and your processes and what you're able to accomplish with what you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, without a good team, you got nothing.
I couldn't agree more. Let's talk a little bit more about that team. So what are some of the challenges you have? You know, you said you found a great team. How hard has it been to do that? Or have you just lucked into a great bunch of people that on your first try?
I would say it's a mixture of both. I would say that, over the years, we've been trying to grow the team and find the right people. And you look at it as like a puzzle. Sometimes the pieces don't fit, and sometimes they fit perfectly, and you're like, oh my God, that's a slam dunk. Yeah. And so it takes time, and it takes some trust to see how some folks develop.
Sure.
And we've been able to trust some folks and be there for us and help us keep growing.
That's awesome. If you could take us through a little bit of what it's like to work at Brown Carbonic. If somebody sees your help wanted ads in the future and things like that, what type of company are you to work for?
We send you to Aruba for 2 weeks.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's like, wait.
So
this content's now.
So we have a team of about 35 people, 35 folks, and we have some guys that have been with us for I think 18 years now.
Wow.
And some that I just on the way here I just talked to a guy that we just hired. He started next week. So we're constantly hiring, just because we keep adding on, we keep growing. Sure. So to work for us, it's a family-owned business. At the end of the day, I like to say that we're super flexible. Things happen. It's reality that things come up, and I think being flexible is one of the most important things that we can be able to offer as a family business. You look at corporate companies and whatnot where they're structured and like, oh, you have a 3-strike system or something like that. And, if your kids get sick, there's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
So I like to say that we're flexible, and that's the key to keeping and having your team be happy.
That's great. It sounds like you have that human approach rather than the big corporate approach.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately folks in businesses of all sizes sometimes adopt, and I don't think it's ever worked out. But that's awesome. Talk a little bit about, the types of positions. And I'm not sure that you even have any open today. Maybe you do, but what are the types of positions? Is it truck drivers? Is it folks to work in the office? What are the most common things?
Yeah, so the most common thing is delivery drivers. I mean, I think that whatever business you're in, delivery drivers they're just hard to find folks that do a good job and want to do a good job.
Sure.
So we have warehouse folks, we have production, whether it's ice production, beverage production, we have service technicians, we have delivery drivers, non-CDL, CDL, and we have our office team.
I was going to ask you that if all the drivers needed CDLs and things, but it sounds like you got a couple different types of trucks. So
Yep. Yeah. So we, just depending on what their specific role is,
sure,
if they need it or not.
That's awesome. Your facility is here in East Syracuse. I know where it is, but talk a little bit about that. Just, what size is your operation and what do you got going on over there?
Yeah. So we are in East Syracuse, right off of the Cary Circle exit on the thruway, right across from Bull and Bear on 298. We have a 17,000 square foot facility. That's about a third of what it should be.
Okay.
We're actively looking for something new.
Wow.
But yeah, that's it.
That's incredible. And your ice operation, the soda, all of that is right now housed in the same location?
Yeah, for the most part. We do some offsite storage for ice.
Okay.
Without that, we wouldn't be able to have the growth that we do.
Yeah.
So, for example, I have about as of today, I think I have about 1,400 pallets in cold storage right now.
Really?
Yeah, that's a lot of ice.
Where do you? I just picture like one of these storage unit places, but it's got to be a freezer, right?
It's a freezer, yeah.
Where do you go to find such a thing?
So it's out in Fulton.
Okay.
And so we truck it there. Right now we're doing it like 2 to 3 times a day, where we send a truckload there and back.
So that's, as you're talking about actively expanding, if you were to do that, obviously the cost of that logistics
not cheap.
Might even, cut into whatever it would cost to get a place closer. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, we've been looking for a while.
Yeah.
But it's tough right now. The market's so tough.
Sure.
So not only is nothing available, but when you do find something, either it goes super quick, or the price is like 4 times higher than what it should be. Just, they call it the micron effect right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the area's booming, and as awesome as that is.
I know, I love it. I say that all the time, like, it's great. I think it's super good for the community, and I'm really hopeful in that everything happens.
Yeah.
The negative is that it affects us short term, and
the deals are gone.
Yeah.
We were almost spoiled to some degree with when things weren't spectacular, because you could always get something for a crazy deal. But that's how life goes, I guess. If we could, let's talk just a little bit about, we've mentioned a couple of these things. Who would be a prospective client of yours? So if there was somebody that you wanted to bring in as a new regular customer, is it a restaurant owner? Is it a convenience store owner? Like, how does that even work?
Yeah. So, restaurant owners, or not just restaurant, but anybody that is in the hospitality industry.
Sure.
So it could be a hotel. It could be, which we didn't talk about that, but we also handle dish machines and laundry.
Oh,
so
wow.
we handle laundry.
You'll do my laundry?
No, I won't. But we provide the soaps for it.
Gotcha.
And that's a newer venture for us. So anybody really in the hospitality. So it could be bar, restaurant, diner, movie theater, hotel, hospitality.
So let's run down this real quick. So, I got myself a little bar restaurant joint, right? I need soda.
Yeah.
You can get me the soda. To make the soda work, I need a soda, like a fountain machine, right?
Yep.
You do that part.
Yeah. So we take care of the whole equipment side of it.
So kind of along the lines of that is the CO2 that you mentioned, right? That's really where the bubbles come in, right? Is that an accurate? I'm figuring this out. I've drank enough soda for 8 lifetimes. You think I would be an expert on this? Then we want to keep it cold.
Yep.
And you're making the ice and providing the ice for that.
Ice machines too. Yeah.
We want to wash the glass afterwards. You got the dishwasher, the chemicals that do that. What am I missing? Or is this
If your freezer breaks, we have dry ice for that.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, see, now this is a whole nother level. What, for people that don't know, what's the difference between dry ice and regular ice, other than it's smoky and cool?
So obviously regular ice is just frozen water.
Yep.
When it melts, it gets wet. You have a puddle on the
Sure.
floor. Dry ice is carbon dioxide in the solid form. So basically it's compressed and it turns into dry ice and in the factory or manufacturing. And when that melts, it's actually when it sublimates, which means it goes from solid right to gas.
Okay.
It skips that liquid stage. And when it sublimates, it just goes into the air. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so is that why, because you don't have that puddle, is that why you would use it for a freezer breakdown versus traditional?
Temperature difference. So
Okay.
ice, wet ice, as we call it, you would put in a cooler to keep your beer cold or soda cold. Dry ice is there to keep your hamburgers, your hot dogs frozen.
Okay. So it's that better. And does it sort of hold that temperature for?
It's 110 below zero. Wow. It's cold. It's that cold. I got burn
Yeah,
marks.
I was going to say it becomes dangerous, right? And is that one of the things with handling it becomes a unique challenge?
So it's cold. And so
Sure.
yeah, you definitely have to wear gloves. But actually the most dangerous part about it is that two things. When it sublimates, it actually releases CO2 in the air and it creates a lot of pressure. So there's videos all over Facebook where you see people blowing up bottles. And what happens is it creates so much pressure that it can blow something up.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, if you put it in a freezer, if you have a restaurant that has a freezer that breaks and you put dry ice in there, well, now that whole freezer is full of carbon dioxide.
Right.
There's no oxygen in there.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very dangerous environment.
Yeah, you don't want to hang out in there very long.
No.
That's interesting. Is that something you manufacture as well?
So we don't manufacture that
Yeah.
just because the difficulty in
It seems like a science fair project.
yes. So we truck that in and we get about and we have dry ice almost always on hand.
Wow.
Whether it's for storms or for your freezer that breaks,
Yeah.
or if you're going to Florida,
I see.
bring it with you.
Does that is that packaged in a plastic bag or like wet ice?
Yeah. So it dry ice is actually in 3 different forms.
Okay.
It's the most common. There's rice, which is like, it looks like rice. Like if you were to take rice
Little
out of a
pellets
bag.
of it.
And then, so that's used for blasting, like for cleaning.
I see.
Ever heard of sandblasting?
Yeah.
Same idea, but it doesn't leave a mess.
Wow.
So with sand, you have to shovel that
Sure.
sand up and
this
dispose
just sort of
it
dissipates.
evaporates.
Yeah. Okay.
Pellets, which they're 5/8 inch thick pieces of dry ice, and that's used for keeping things cold. It's just more manageable to
Yeah.
if we wanted to
Custom shape it.
exactly, place it around that. That's one of the more common things. And then block, which comes in a
I feel like that's what I picture the most when you say dry ice. Is
it's a 10 by 10 block, and you can get it in slices or slabs, as they call it.
Wow.
So
That's incredible. All these things. See, and this is
I'll bring some in.
every time. We got to do that. We got to see it. I don't know that I've
Halloween's
ever
gonna be fun
actually
this
seen
year.
any in real life, which I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm sheltered, but always in the movies. But that's so neat. So that whole gamut of products you can offer to any of these local businesses, local hospitality organizations. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
That is pretty neat. And it's, again, as we mentioned before, it's all sort of on demand. So, you fill things up as they need it. You got a great business, man. It's such a neat thing.
Yeah.
If we jump back to the soda for just a moment, are there any local restaurants that you want to just sort of give a shout out for? If somebody's watching this and like, man, I want to try some of this Challenger Cola today, where could they go?
My favorite is Bull and Bear.
Okay. Is that not just because it's right across the street from you, right?
It's very convenient,
Super
especially
convenient.
lunch breaks.
Yeah.
But they've been a very long time supporter of us, and we're excited to be a part of their journey as they continue growing.
That's awesome. And I think they were the one that you mentioned to me, is very proud of serving yours, right? They actually make a point to tell customers about it.
Yeah. So if you were to go in there and ask them for a soda or Cola
Sure.
or Pepsi or not, they would say we have Brown Carbonic or Challenger Cola,
That's
locally
incredible.
made. Yeah.
And that locally made piece is something that folks love, and they eat up, or they drink up, as the case may be. So it's just so neat to have that here, and we're glad that you're able to share this with us.
So, like I said, my grandparents, they started down in Elmira.
Yeah.
And when the opportunities came up, my grandparents bought out Brown Carbonic, which is the name we use now.
Sure.
They also had acquired Sunset Carbonic, which I mentioned. They acquired Remco, MC Carbonic,
Wow.
Fall Beverage, and these are all small companies. You know, way back when there used to be 10 different like soda distributors just in Central New York.
Sure.
Either selling Coke or Pepsi or whatnot, but there was all these little distributors. And over the years, my family has been able to grow and keep growing and acquire those businesses.
That's interesting. And let me ask you this, and I don't know how much of this story you know. Maybe you know all of it, but you mentioned originally when your grandfather started, he started working in these places and fixing this equipment, and then got into kind of selling things. Do you know anything about how he made the jump from kind of working on these things to actually buying this first business or opening the first company he was involved in and all of these?
Not really. I just remember that, you know, I wasn't around then.
Sure.
I just remember the stories of, you know, the hustle, more or less the hustle of way back when, of how to acquire accounts and all that kind of stuff. There's some pretty cool stories. And one of them, and I'm so thankful that this is not the case anymore, but let's just say you own a bar again. For me to sell to you, or for this person or that person, everyone would be belly up to the bar, and it was the last person that stood there, or, you know, at the end of the night, that got the business.
Wow.
So it was definitely a little bit different industry back then, where, and those are all the, you know, the corner bars back in the day and whatnot, but that was typically how you would get into account, is you're the longest standing.
Wow.
I'm glad that's not the case anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So obviously on top of, and that's what's really interesting to me about a business like this, you take people like your grandparents working in the industry, and, you know, there's lots of people who do that. They're mechanically inclined. They're great with things and that, but to actually run a business is a whole nother story. And to have somebody that has both of those skill sets, you know, and then can leverage into growing those businesses, like that's incredibly rare. And it's just such a neat story, you know, to see the history of that, to see businesses that have been in Central New York for generations, and you can have people on your team that have been there for decades and decades. Like that's where it's supposed to be. And I think it's so cool that you've continued to do that.
Thank you.
You named a couple of businesses in Elmira. I think there was a couple, I think you mentioned before, out of the Utica area that you kind of folded in. Any others that we haven't mentioned that have sort of become part of what we are today?
I'm trying to think. There was Remco, which was Remco, I believe, was over like near Tip Hill.
Okay.
MC Carbonic, which was Magic City, down in Binghamton. Sunset, Fall Beverage. I think there's another one. I just can't remember the name of it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, these are before my time.
Yeah. No, it's just an interesting history, you know, to go through the timeline of how you got here. And that's got to help with reputation as well, right? So I can imagine, as you're somebody who walks into a new business, new restaurant or bar, that kind of long-standing brand has got to help your sales efforts, right?
Yeah, we're established, and we have the stability to help you and help you grow.
How does that, if you could, just take us through a little bit of how that works? So I'm a guy who opens this new bar downtown. I don't know how to do it, but I've always wanted to own a bar. You know, I'm one of those guys on Bar Rescue. How do I come to find you typically, or do you find me? Are you trying to pay attention to every new place that opens? You know, what's that look like?
Most of it's very organic. Like if you ever worked in a restaurant, that's typically like half people have ever worked in one, they want to open their own. So you've been around our product. You just give us a call.
They already started to know you.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think that's interesting. It kind of speaks to your overall branding effort, like you're talking about here. So that's pretty neat.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit for a few minutes about what folks can expect from other episodes of the Fizz.
Yeah, so
Still love this name.
I've been, coming up with some of the next ideas, bringing on some our biggest supporters, our biggest clients or customers,
Yeah.
and have them share their stories and why they've decided to partner with us, and vendors that we buy from, and employees that have been with us for a while, and share their stories of who they are, behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, that's, I think, going to be so interesting to
It's
hear
gonna be
these
fun.
things. Again, so many aspects of this business. Like we mentioned, it's a business you might drive by. You go to Bull and Bear for lunch, and you look across the street, and there's a place with big ice trucks. That's kind of neat, Not give it a second thought without realizing how many things are going on, how many people are gainfully employed, and keeping us well hydrated, I guess you would
Yeah.
say, throughout central New York.
Yeah, next time you go out to eat, see if they have Challenger Cola.
That's it. I love that. On the soda, as we're discussing it, I got to get your professional soda man's opinion on this.
Yeah.
The pop soda line. How do you feel about people that call it pop?
I'm thankful that we don't hear it a lot.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if you head towards the west part of the state, it's very different. They all call it pop, and I'm like, no, it's called soda.
It's like, and this is what I love the line, I feel like, is just somewhere west of Buffalo, right? Like between Rochester and Buffalo.
I think like Rochester is like, it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it's like east or west, but it's like, depending on where you go, it splits. But just further west after Rochester you go, it's pop.
It's crazy. And then, of course, if anybody's ever been down south, anything is Coke. And you go to a restaurant and you'll say, what kind of Coke do you want? Like, wait, what? It's just, you want to talk about a killer brand. That's what they've been able to do. But it's just so interesting, all these different places. I feel like this is the one thing that, beer, pizza, that's all called beer and pizza everywhere in the country. But here, nobody can figure out what they want to call our carbonated beverages.
So you had mentioned like across the country, like, what's cool is, we're local here in Syracuse, and we've been here for a long time. If you go across the country, there's actually other companies just like us that represent their territories.
Sure.
And so like we talked about people to put on the episode, some of the next episodes. I'd like to reach out to some of them too, and hear their stories, because there's very similar stories like us that are very family dynamic businesses that have withstand time and changes and everything else, and see their perspectives and what they have to say.
Is your industry like a lot of others where there's a very tight industry community? Are there conferences? Are there, like you mentioned, a lot of other folks who do what you do in other states that
I'm actually going down to Florida in 3 days to go to one. Yeah. So it's the IBDA, International Beverage Dispensing Equipment Association.
Wow.
I think it's a mouthful. I screw it up half the time. But basically that's independent beverage manufacturers like us across the country, and technically it's international. So I think I don't know if there's Mexico or Canada in there too, but we all come together and talk about, problems and what's new out there, with some new products, some new lines, and just social and network. Yeah. It's fun.
I mean, I think that's so important. I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand that exists almost for every industry.
Yeah.
And no matter what you're doing, if you want to grow, that's, colleagues that are non-competitive, you're all in different places. So nobody has that issue, and everybody that just wants to help each other, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And they're usually in warm places. So it's a nice reason to get out of Central New York.
Well, those organizations, they got it dialed in, man. They're like, we're going to focus everything on somewhere we want to be.
Yeah. I was in Cali in November for an ice convention.
Wow.
Southern, it wasn't LA. It was Southern
That seems
Cali,
counterintuitive.
They sell a lot of ice out there.
I would think there'd be like an Alaskan ice conference or something, No,
us ice guys got to get out in the warm once in a while.
Yeah, no, I believe it. That's pretty cool. I do want to build an igloo now in the middle of your facility one day, but that's a whole nother thing. The Fizz at Brown Carbonic is the name of this podcast. Shawn is this gentleman's name. You're probably not going to see me. He's going to be here with way more interesting people in the future episodes, and we're pretty excited to
You'll be back. I'll make sure
to
you
have that happen. But we'll definitely be around, and we're very excited to have you.
Thanks.
Shawn, anything else before we cut out?
No, cheers.
Cheers.
Cool.
Next time I'll toast with not
That was
coffee.
warm.
Yeah.